All right. So this is actually the first one of these that we're going to be doing with Risk Advisor on our YouTube channel. What we wanted to do is something that's really important to us is helping agents write more profitable insurance and do a better job of taking care of both their risk for their clients, but also the risk for their agencies. So what we wanted to do is record this video and spend some time with Zach Hirsch. He has become the go-to insurance agent for insurance agents. And what I mean by that is he is the go-to in the IOA group when it comes to writing agency E&O. And as we're going to learn today, there's some really important things that we need to be focused on as agency owners when it comes to our E&O. And no, we're not going to talk about Hiscox and how they're the cheapest program out there and they're great for us. They're terrible. Just skip that part. We're not going with Hiscox E&O, and we're going to find out more why you should contact Zach and have him help you out with his E&O or with your E&O. That being said, I'd like to go ahead and he's been here the whole time, so we'll go ahead and open it up to you, Zach. Say a little bit about your agency, kind of how you got into the agency E&O space, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, appreciate that, Dave. Appreciate the kind introduction. I have been doing professional liability for over a decade now. I was in the lawyer space for a couple of years before I got into professional liability. I went to law school in Houston, Texas, and I got into the professional liability insurance space through kind of my father, who was a well-known insurance defense attorney. So I'd always been around insurance, and it was kind of a natural foray into professional liability insurance. So I started my agency back in 2010 as a niche agency doing professional liability insurance for mostly law firms.
Okay.
I got my start with law firms and really cut my teeth on that and grew a sizable book of business that I still own and operate now. But as you know, as going forward, as you meet people and make connections, and as I got involved in IAOA, I realized that, you don't have to limit yourself. The professional liability form is pretty much standard across the gamut. So depending on what Main Street, business you are, the professional liability form doesn't really change all that much. So as I got to know people and I got to know other agents, it seemed to be kind of a natural fit that I would do other insurance agents. So I remember early on and speaking with, Nicholas Ayers, and we had done a little podcast, and I said, you know what, this is probably a niche I need to explore. And that's kind of, full circuit. That's kind of how we got to where we are today. And so, I've really appreciated getting to know you and the IOA group. It's been a very, productive relationship. And I hope I've been of help to, all my agents in just providing that, that knowledge that, hey, I don't know everything about insurance, but I know professional liability insurance. And, you have that comfort in knowing you're getting an agent who knows what they're talking about. And, I can walk you through, the, the scary parts of professional liability insurance.
Yeah, it's funny. Right before we hopped on this call, I was checking one last thing on Facebook, and there was yet another question about insurance E&O and the comparison between two carriers. And
Yep.
Greg Hogan is, I've never gotten the pleasure at this point to meet him in person. Look forward to the day that I get to, but he always has the best responses, I feel like. And one thing he said was, if you're not willing to read the policy forms, get an agent. And I feel like as agents, we who don't understand or haven't made the decision or haven't gotten into it and decided on the niche, one of the things that we do as independent agents, like, I can probably find a market for that and do it myself and make a little bit of commission. And that, I felt like that was the perfect setup for this call, where if you're not willing to do the work, then get an agent to do it for you. And that's it kind of goes along with a lot of things we're going to talk about today. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and just jump straight into it. Sure. And I think this is a good way to kind of get started. But what are not only just the most common E&O claims, but also, I guess you can throw in some of the the weird ones that you've seen out there as well. But we'll start it out with what are some of the most common E&O claims you see against insurance agents?
Well, I think, it breaks down into kind of it's segmented in a sense, but I would say 25% of insurance agents E&O claims are simpler than you think, and they are just a simple failure to procure the coverage requested. So somebody comes to an agent and says, "Hey, I want this," and they end up saying, "That's not what I wanted," or "That's not exactly what I said." And so, all right off the bat, as you can imagine, the old he said, she said battle
Yep.
begins very quickly. And so, believe it or not, that really is just the catch-all phrase is just simply that you fail as an agent to procure the coverage that they request. And then, from there, David, you're going to get a breakdown of a smaller percentage of claims and a breakdown, but you're going to get failure to adequately advise on policy provisions. As you can imagine, hey, you
Yep.
didn't tell me this specific exclusion was in that policy. I didn't realize this exclusion was in there because you didn't tell me.
Yep.
So you get into that. Another big one would be, how about, when the agent or the insured is going to say, you didn't advise me on my coverage gaps, on my exposures. So you're going to see a lot of that, you should have told me, or you should have offered me this coverage. You should have offered me flood insurance for my homeowner's policy. I never heard you mention that. I didn't
Yep.
know that existed. I didn't know you could get this amount of coverage in flood. So there's all those types of things. And then you get some smaller ones, things that are application related in there. But I think those, as a generality, are going to be your main areas where you're going to see the majority of claims against agents.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, again, it's crazy that we were having a conversation inside of our agency on how to handle some as the market's getting harder and harder. Where Mappus, my agency, is located in coastal South Carolina, and a problem that a lot of coastal areas are having, or carriers are leaving. And so we're having more and more of our homeowners carriers who, either if they're not leaving, they're having all these different exclusions, or these E&S carriers that may or may not cover it correct, as the same as an admitted carrier. So that definitely, I think, makes a lot of sense, and something that is really, really important. I guess I'm going to skip around a little bit here,
Yeah.
but what are some of the biggest, whether it be a tool or it be a process, what would you recommend being the best way to prevent some of those things that you were just mentioning?
Oh, this is a loaded question, I think, in terms of.
You mean I didn't give you a softball there?
Yeah, no, this is a softball. It's just, is anybody in the audience ready to take notes on this one? Because I could talk for hours on this one, but listen, this is the question of the hour for an insurance agent. And what do they need to know? And the first thing I would tell you is 2 words: due diligence. And so, starting off, the agency has a due diligence to the insured, right? And that due diligence is to bring them the products that they request. So with that said, the number one, I think that a lot of agencies miss, David, and this is one that doesn't get talked about, but should, is the part about researching your carriers, the carriers' products that you're going to be selling to your insureds. What do you know about them? And so if you don't know anything about them, then you're not doing your due diligence. You need to know how these carriers are rated. Ask for claims information. Ask the types of claims they're seeing. Speak to a claims representative. Say, hey, I'd like to speak to a claims representative with the carrier and figure out what kind of claims y'all are seeing and how y'all are handling those claims. Because you may find out in that discussion that they're declining claims for the simplest reasons, or they're making it very difficult on the insured to submit claims and then get coverage for those claims. So if you don't know that type of stuff, then you risk your own E&O claim because you're bringing them a product from a carrier that could be a trouble spot for them. And so those are things to think about. one of the other things, and let me mention this here is, and maybe this is my lawyer brain working along with my professional liability brain, but I believe that all of your agents or any agency's agents should know what the reasonable standard of care for an insurance agent is in their state. So let me give you an example. I'm here in Texas. I'm in Houston, Texas. So one of the things that is simple, and I've actually been an expert witness on this matter several times in the court of law. And basically, I get up on the stand and I tell a jury what a standard of care is for an insurance agent. And for Texas, believe it or not, it's very simple. It is to procure the insurance requested or report back to the insured that you cannot obtain that coverage. That's the simple standard of care in Texas. Now, there'll be a variation where you in South Carolina, but I guarantee you, if we looked it up together, it would be very similar. It's going to be something that's just very simple that says either get what they request, get the insurance that they request, or report back that you can't. And that's it. And so as long as agents are aware of what their duty is, then it might help them to go forward in handling their interactions with their insurers. Now, obviously, there's a couple of, obviously there's some exceptions about special relationships, and then I would arise to a special relationship because I do hold myself out as someone who knows more about professional liability. So someone's going to say, hey, Zach, you know, if I get sued, someone's going to say, hey, Zach, you held yourself out as a professional liability specialist, expert. I don't disagree with that. So that's what I'm here for. But the average agent, David, does not have that, you know, special circumstance. They just need to know what their duty is. So I would have that conversation with all my agents. And then, you know, from there, obviously with the exclamation point is document, document, document. And it just, I can't begin to tell you enough how many things slip through the cracks when your agents are not documenting. And, you know, a lot of times what I say is that the agency of a certain size should have some sort of written manual that says these are the things that must be documented in an agent's interaction with their insureds. And so at least you have that in writing, and those processes are then put into place. So every agent is not wondering, do I need to do this? Do I need to do that? There's no question about it. So documenting is huge. The other thing I would say that I think gets lost in some of this is when an insurance agent is doing their intake for a new client, get to know the client. Get to know the client. If the client has a business and they're coming to you for business insurance, get to know the business. Do your own investigation. Go on their website. See what they're selling. See what the risks are. You need to take the time to figure out who you're dealing with so you know them. So even if they say to you, so-and-so, I need this for so-and-so, you can say, well, I looked on your website and it looks like you might need coverage for this. So the more you recommend insurance, the better off you are. There's no such thing as over recommending insurance. The only thing they can say, David, is what? No, I don't need it, or I don't want it. And if that's the case, then simply have them document that. And so you can alleviate a lot of the obvious claims that could fall through the cracks by just simply having the agent prepared with due diligence, with documenting, and with simply doing some investigation on what they're dealing with. And that goes for homeowners, you know, figuring out the value. I'm going to skip around, but, you know, figuring out the value of a homeowner's claim. Those are the biggest claims that get dropped in the homeowner space, is the value of the home. So I'm sure you've heard this example. This is just a simple example. Homeowner says, I need to take out coverage for my house. They take out coverage. There's a fire. Then the fire claim is submitted and they realize they don't have enough coverage to get them back to pre-loss where they were. So I know that's simple, but that's probably the most common homeowner's claim that comes to be, is just one where they didn't do the research, they didn't properly identify the value of the home, and therein lies the claim. And so, I could go on forever on this conversation, but I think I'm trying to get, the agent's mind wrapped around thinking, you know what I mean? Using the concept of thinking. It's not just as simple as, sure, you can write everything down. Sure, you can have them sign up and everything. But the more proactive an agent can be, the better off the agency is going to be in terms of claims. So if you have agents that are thinking on the ball and they're trained to think on the ball, then you're going to have less probability of your agent seeing E&O claims.
Yeah, so a couple things that you mentioned to me or mentioned there kind of got me thinking. So it sounds like, I mean, I think this is pretty obvious for everybody out there, but having a repeatable process for your agency is very important. What could happen in an E&O claim if you've got an agent who just decides that they're going to do things differently than the rest of the agency, whether it be not following that process that you have written out, or using the resources that have been provided that obviously will help with that process. What can a rogue agent do or cause when it comes to an E&O claim?
Well, I mean, that's a rogue employee is anyone's, any business owner's nightmare.
Yeah.
Because, they're opening you up. If they're going off schedule, if you will, then they're opening you up to a myriad of claims. And so again, that's part of, it's easier said than done, but the hiring process is obviously, as you know, not an easy one. As a business owner yourself, that's not an easy one. But that's why I say the more policies in place, the more things that can happen for the better. The less policies there are more chances that a rogue agent, if you will, the rogue is maybe not the word, because we don't want to in term criminality, but it can cause mistakes. And if you don't have a well-trained agent in there and they don't have policies to review or to rely on, or if they don't have the training, then you're going to run into a claim that you're just unaware of as a business owner, that you don't see coming, because then they're not going to get, they didn't get the application signed, or they didn't, or they didn't discuss this coverage. And then the basic things that we talked about early on come into light much more quickly, because there just is no manual in place. There's no schedule, if you will, for that agent to rely on. So what I say to my agency owners is, I can give you documents, I can give you claims examples. I have a I have a library of tools I can give you, but take the time to review them as an owner, because this can only help you avoid having the agent that is making them is mistake prone, if you will. And so a lot of this is going to depend on your input and your willingness to protect your agency, because sure, the policy is there to react to an E&O situation, but you want to be the proactive agency owner and saying, I'm setting my agents up for success by doing this, by laying out this foundation, by training my agents a certain way. And a lot of these things we're talking about are things that are important, because I can tell the difference between two agents when they're making a sale about the processes they went through to make that sale.
Yeah.
And so, as a good agent, I'm going to have all these things documented. I'm going to have all my, my applications signed. I'm going to have all my phone calls recorded. I'm going to have nice, neat everything. I'm going to show where I recommended coverages. You're going to be able to show that. If I'm an agency owner and I come to you and say, show me how the process went down, the agent should be able to show you that.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be that, well, I sold him this, but you can't show it anywhere. You can't document anymore. Or I recommended this, but where is that recommendation? Where did the client, where was the email exchange that said, No, thank you. I don't want earthquake insurance. No, thank you. I don't want flood insurance. If you can't show that, then you set yourself up for that E&O claim, because that's what the insured is basically going to say. Well, I don't remember having that conversation. I mean, that's the
Yep.
oldest in a courtroom of law. If I could tell you how many times I could, that person gets in the state, I don't remember having that conversation. And if you can't produce an email exchange or a signed document saying that conversation existed and you signed off no, then unfortunately, most courts, are liberal in terms of, which way they're going to lean, and they're
Yep.
probably going to lean with the insured if you can't prove.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely something that we've heard for years, is that the when you get into if you're at the point where you're in the court of law, then you're already in a bad spot to where
Yes.
you're not going to be the one that is getting favorable treatment
No.
from the jury. But one thing that you kind of mentioned there, so obviously here at Risk Advisor, one of the things that we're doing and helping with is creating a repeatable sales process. And whether it's asking the questions even about, hey, like, when are you moving into this house, because to avoid a vacancy endorsement. That is one of the things that we find very important, which is why I wanted to do this interview, is because E&O is such a big topic. It's something that needs to be thought about a lot more than just once a year when your renewal comes around. And there's a lot of things that we can do as agents and agencies to, in our processes, prevent those from the likelihood of those occurring. What talk a little bit about and you've done some of it, but talk a little bit more about the repeatable process and how important that is in the sales process for, in particular, a personal lines agency.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the processes, like I said, are put in place from the start, enable the agency itself to maintain and mitigate risk. And so, obviously that's easier said than done. But if there are procedures in place, and I've got kind of and I can certainly send you this, I've got kind of a long 5-part process that breaks down what you should be doing as an agency to really streamline, so an agent knows and an agent is trained on those processes to very quickly identify risks and then implement in their interactions with an insured those processes. So it helps to it helps the agent to overcome any problems they might have. And again, I can't stress enough the difference between having a trained agent and one that is trained in both processes and investigation and understanding and listening to the clients. I just can't underemphasize that. It's just an important process for an agency owner to set these things up, to have these in place.
Absolutely. Let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about the actual E&O policy itself.
Yeah.
What is one of the, let's call it a policy feature? What's a policy feature that insurance agents should be looking at when they're comparing different E&O policies?
So this is probably my favorite question as it pertains to this space. You adequately described, I think there are levels to purchasing a professional liability form for insurance agents. You have the right to purchase through a Hiscox or Bybert, but I think we're going to put them, for purposes of this discussion, we're going to put them in a different box. So, with that said, I think there are levels to a form. And I hate to use the cliche that everybody uses, but you pay for what you get. And the mistake I see, David, and I cringe sometimes when I'm having these phone calls with agents, is practice what you preach. If you're preaching to your clients, your own agency clients, what? Get the best policy form get the best coverage. It may not be the cheapest coverage, but it's going to protect your assets, right?
That value over price.
That's it. And so that's what I preach. That's what my agency, Hirsch Insurance, that's what we preach. It's you're buying value from me. I'm not going to ever sell you the cheapest policy, and I'm never going to claim to. But there are levels to purchasing insurance, and especially professional liability insurance, that can protect you in so many better ways. And so I would say there are probably 2 or 3 features that I think need to be pointed out in a professional liability policy. Number one is defense outside the limits. So defense outside the limits simply means that defense costs in defending a claim are not eroding the limits of liability on the policy. So if you have $1 million per claim coverage, if you have, let's say you turn in a claim and that firm defending the carrier and you has already billed $200,000 in defense costs. Well, if you have an eroding policy, if you have defense inside, then you only have $800,000 left to protect you from a judgment or, or a negotiation or a settlement or whatever that may be. If you have defense outside, then that pool of money is taken separately and paid for by the carrier separately, and it does not erode that $1 million in limits. So that stays intact. So basically, you're getting a lot more coverage because 8 times out of 10, David, the claim is probably going to get settled long before you ever have a trial or anything like that. So a majority of what's going to happen in that process is going to be defense costs. It's the firm. I mean, look, I'm a lawyer. I know that lawyers can ramp up bills and they know how to bill. And so those defense costs will eat that limit very quickly. So I can't stress enough, whatever limit you're going to buy, if you're buying from a carrier, make sure you get defense costs outside the limits endorsed on that policy. It's just a whole nother level of protection. That's one. The other one deals with the deductible level, and it's called first dollar defense or a loss only deductible. They're synonymous terms. So first dollar defense basically says that you will not tender your deductible unless there is a damages or an indemnity payment made on behalf of you. So if all the carrier does, just like we talked about, is defend the claim with defense costs, then the carrier is paying that first dollar of defense. So they're tendering essentially that money and their deductible is not being paid. So if you're carrying it may not be a big deal if you're carrying a $5,000 deductible, but if you're certainly a larger agency that's carrying a $10,000 or a $25,000 retention, that's a lot of money. And if you don't have to tender that deductible, that could be, a nice expenditure savings because, like I said, the majority of these claims end up being resolved before you're in a trial process. So it's just defense costs. So those are 2 features that I would not purchase a professional liability policy without. I just don't even think it makes sense to have that because you're getting so much more coverage and you're mitigating your own risk by eliminating having to tender your deductible unless you find that you are found liable of the claim. And then the third one there's a couple others, but one I might point out that I think people don't think about, David, on this end is, and it was in the IAOA group today, and it might have been that same post you were looking at. Yeah. I happened to catch wind of that. And what caught my eye was, some of these carriers, the retroactive date, as we know, is basically the born on beer date of a policy. So if your retroactive date is August 1st, 2010, as long as you keep coverage current and don't let it lapse, you're always going to have claims back to that date, August 1st, 2010. Well, there's something at the other end of a policy called the extended reporting period, or tail coverage is what it's called. And what people don't realize is that's important because if you sell your book of business or something happens and you want to retire, you're going to want that tail, because that
Yep.
tail is going to cover you, the agency, for the period the policy was open. So any claims that come along, you can still report them during the policy period. But one of the policies that was pointed out today, obviously I will make no mention of that carrier, but from what I saw, they only offer a 1-year extended reporting period. And to me, there is no way I'm purchasing a professional liability policy where I can only purchase a 1-year tail. There's just no way. Not every carrier is going to offer an unlimited tail. A lot do, but you at least want maybe 3 years, 5 years. If you're retiring or you're selling your book, I mean, you should be spending that money anyways to have that, to have that peace of mind that, I'm done, I'm retired, I'm out, whatever I'm doing. But the claims are covered for that book of business during the time I had it open. So that was a little bit eye-opening to me. And I think those are, we could go on and on, but I think those are things that are relevant to this conversation now.
Yeah. No, I think there's a lot of gold there, and a lot of things that I feel like you repeat quite a bit in the group and other places, but it's good to have them all in one location. And hopefully that saves you a conversation or two down the road from someone listening to that piece of it. But you talked a little bit about it earlier, and feel free to bring it back up. But what are some specific tools or resources that you would recommend that can help agents avoid E&O claims?
Yeah, so I'm a big reading fan, believe it or not, and I think reading is maybe a lost art. I don't want to pick on everyone, but again, this goes back to the conversation of hey, I don't want to read my policy. I'd rather you tell me what's in it. Having conversations with your insureds about just simply reading their policy is, believe it or not, I think this, there's just a lot of people that don't read their policies. And so training your agents, I just can't express this enough, that a well-trained agent and an agent that is flying by the seat of their pants are going to have different sales experiences, in terms of that relationship with the insured. So to answer your question directly, I think it's incumbent on the agency owner and whoever the agency managers are, whoever's in charge of the agency, you guys need to be ingesting as much reading material and as much up-to-date current trends as you can, so it can help you with the process of training your agents and keeping that, that manual or that dialogue running. And so that agent is in a non-stop place of learning. You can never learn enough on any job you're in. And the crux of my message to you is, you need to be learning as the agency owner, and you guys need to be transferring that to your agents. You need to be having those conversations. You need to be laying out expectations. I'll point to something we said at the very beginning of this conversation about knowing who your carriers are. You know what I mean? I mean, we can all get appointed with a carrier, and that's fun and dandy. But if you don't know anything about that carrier, then you're opening yourself up to the possibility that maybe they don't handle claims well. Maybe they don't do this. And so I just think maybe my message is beating a drum, and it probably is. And I'm sure people are going to tell you that, but it's passing down knowledge. So
Yep.
I want to take my information, pass it to you, and I want you to take it and pass it to your agents, because I'm telling you, a prepared agent that can, on a piece of paper can put together, hey, new client. Okay, I need to do these 5 things, David. And these 5 things are, I need to investigate this person. If it's a homeowner, I need to investigate their house. I need to know their house like it's mine. If it's a business, I need to know more than just what they're telling me. There's plenty of sources you can go to find out information about businesses. And it's just the due diligence part of the project. You really need to look at, insurance as an investigative process, because they're coming to you to purchase something, and you need to understand what it is they want to purchase. And insurance and insureds are not, they're not savvy in insurance. They're coming to you, the
Yep.
agent, because they expect you to be. So
Yep.
how can you do a transaction properly if your agent isn't trained or doesn't understand how to go about doing that? And so that, to me, is it's just a matter of in-house taking the time to, even if it's weekly, man, let's say it's a 30-minute meeting every Friday with your staff and saying, today we are going to talk about this process, this E&O process, we're going to talk about how to learn more about a business, how to go about asking these questions about a business, how to go about recommending insurance to this business when they're not telling you everything you need to know.
Right.
And so if the more conversations you're having with your agents, the more procedures you're putting in place, the more you're streamlining, and the more you're doing things repetition, your agents will get better because you're giving them the tools. I can give you all the tools in the world as far as, you know what I mean, as far as reading material and all that, but it's up to the agency itself to structure and put into place those things for the agent to succeed.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, obviously that's something that we definitely recommend, and definitely something that we're trying to help with. Again, kind of point quickly to Risk Advisor, the repeatable process that we're talking about, the asking the right questions, diving into things a little bit deeper, not trying to operate like lemonades of the world, and
Yes.
where, hey, let me get your name, your date of birth, and your email address, and I can get you a quote on your address that I didn't even ask for. And there, as an agent, as a trusted advisor, it's our job, it's our expectation that due diligence and that reasonable care that you were talking about, to not be those direct consumer carriers, which kind of looping it back in before we get to our final question. That's what we're trying and wanting to do, and why we're going to spend resources over at Risk Advisor on having these conversations with people like you, where it's not just about selling insurance, it's about protecting yourself and your agency. So I think there's been a ton of great resources that just this video alone has provided, and I really do appreciate your time. One thing that I think is a good place to end this on is, where do you feel the E&O space is going for agencies? What should we expect from here?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. And in the short time that the last 5 years, I want to say that I have really been focused on insurance agents E&O, a lot has happened. And frankly, the professional liability market as a whole is hardening. So if I can look at the bigger picture of where we're at, with COVID, obviously, comes an economic downturn. So anytime you're going to have a pandemic or a crisis or a hurricane, an earthquake, things happen in insurance based on the economy and where the economy is. And as we've seen, the pandemic is basically is the blind virus. You don't know where it's coming from. And it's not something that's set. Like with a hurricane, you're going to have a set amount of damage in a set place at a set time. And at least you can pay out those claims. COVID is basically just, it's everywhere. And so there is no, there was no preparation for it. There is no COVID coverage. There's obviously, as you know, a ton of exclusions, virus exclusions in policy. So it has created a additional layer of claims. And with those claims, you see a hardening of the professional liability market. So what I'm seeing right now, and I'm telling all my insureds this, is there are a lot of insurance agency, markets pulling out. They've already pulled out, and the space is shrinking. And so that makes premiums go up, and it's harder to find good policy forms. And so that's when you really need to find yourself a good agent that can get in, has the relationships, and can find the carriers that are going to write your business. And every agency is different, David, because I mean, I'm different from somebody that writes trucking, long haul trucking. I use long haul trucking as an example because that's kind of the redheaded stepchild in insurance agents E&O. If there just isn't an admitted carrier right now that is going to write the long haul trucking. So
interesting.
If you're doing a significant amount of that, I'm going to tell you, you're going to be on a non-admitted form. It's just the way it is. And so with that said, it's just, we're in an interesting space. I would say that the premiums are rising a little bit. And, in order to get a policy, I think that, covers agencies adequately, you're going to pay more money for it. And there just is less capacity. So, I've seen a lot of discussions about, well, get as many limits as the carrier will offer. I see that all the time. I'm saying, if you're not an agency of a certain size with a certain premium amount or certain revenues, that carrier is not going to offer you higher limits. The carriers are shrinking capacity. So they're not looking to offer a $1 million premium book of business, $5 million limits. It's not going to happen. They're just not going to offer it to you because it doesn't make sense. Why would they open themselves up to a $5 million claim for a small agency of 1 million when they could get a lot more premium from a $10 million book of business on that claim? So, I think the message for me is people need to temper their expectations right now and understand that, what I mean, this is no different than anything else, that, increased demand and economic conditions create the market. And the market right now is hardening and there is just reduced capacity.
It pretty much sounds like a lot of the rest of the markets out there. I don't know of any markets at the moment where it's getting easier to write business, but it makes sense. And it's something that we saw in our agency the last couple of years, and especially with being a coastal agency. And it's good to kind of get a heads up on that. So Zach, I extremely appreciate your time, sharing your knowledge. Tell everyone what the best way to get in touch with you, whether they have a question or when it comes time to shop their E&O insurance with you.
Yeah, and let me just say, David, this was awesome. I need to do more of this. I hope this was helpful for everyone. But yeah, you can reach me. The best way to get me is always by email. I'm at Zach, Z-A-C-H, at Hirsch, H-I-R-S-C-H, insuranceagency.com. I'm very responsive to email, so reach out. Always happy to help. Even if you don't buy from me, I always tell people, man, I'm happy to give free advice. Maybe I'm just weird like that, but I'm happy to do it. Questions are fine. And at the end of the day, we're all looking to help each other. I'm looking to help people, and that's just the way it is for me. It's always been the way. So yeah, this was great, David. Always great to catch up with you, and hopefully we'll do it again at some point.
Yeah, I'm sure there's plenty of things that we did not get a chance to cover today. And
there is.
As we over at Risk Advisor continue to make it a priority to help independent agents with their sales process and renewal processes, the E&O piece is just going to become more and more a piece of that. And we've got some great features already on in the app for that. And that's, like I said, it's going to be a focus moving forward, where we continue to give you resources to help make it easier when it comes time to shop your E&O insurance, but also when if and when a claim does occur. So if we can help you and your agency out in that way, just let us know. We'd love to show you a demo of the application itself and show you what tools and resources we've already got available for you. But again, Zach, I appreciate your time. I had a great time on this, and look forward to continue the conversation down the road. And thank you everyone for taking the time to listen to what he had to say.
Good stuff, man. South Carolina's in good hands.
Love it.
Take care, man.
See you, bud.
Be ya.